Hello, everyone. My name is Vikram Monga. I am governor for Orange County chapter, serving as president for CSALA and on board for Virtual Testing Foundation. And yet, I'm not the smartest one in the room today. I have Dave with me, dear friend and CISO veteran in cybersecurity industry. So we brought him on to talk about some of the trends, some of the insights that we're getting from our community that they want us to talk about. So I will steal Dave's thunder. Dave, why don't we start with your introduction and your company's introduction, and then we'll continue the podcast.
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah. Hi, Dave Ruger. I am the CISO for Invitae. We do genetic testing and are converting value out of those genetic tests into a digital platform, and with the goal of basically making genetics more mainstream for medicine in general. So hopefully we'll be affecting the lives of billions of people around the world, which is a pretty lofty mission. And as far as me personally, I mean, I've been doing security now for probably 25 plus years. I'm old, so what can I say? And I've done everything from building products. I launched a platform that was technically cloud before we had cloud, worked with a lot of enterprise companies, done everything from small startups to very big multinational organizations. So run the gamut of regulatory, and yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. So, Dave, one of the questions that we have received from well-seasoned cybersecurity professionals, leaders, practitioners, and even the newbies that they just got into the industry, either they came from the business role and they dumped into this security, and they're like, hey, you've done marketing, you've done sales. It seems like we need a person to bridge the gap between IT and business, or people who actually climbed the ladder from IT perspective. They started from the bottom up, and now they're CISOs or security leaders. I know CISO is a very well abused word, but I'll say security leader. About security program, that's one thing they always talk about. Hey, either I have security program, I gotta improve it, I gotta mature it, I gotta change it, I gotta enhance it, or they want to start a new one. So let's start with that. What are your thoughts about, and how do you suggest our audience to go about starting a new security program, build it, or even enhance it if they have one?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's actually a common tale, right? When you think about this particular role in the life of a CISO in a particular company, I think generally tenure is anywhere between 1.5 and 2 years. Good reason, because companies find themselves having significant challenges as the business evolves. Basically, the program needs to change. And so a lot of times it's either you need to get someone who knows how to scale, in which case a fairly foundational program, let's say, needs to expand, or you don't have much and you got to build from the ground up. And I've done both. And I would say, the key thing for building the program is to really take a look at what's going to track is the biggest amount of risk early on that you can shore up quickly. I've had a lot of success looking at frameworks, especially things like CIS, where we can just identify individual aspects of a program. Even the CIS top 20 now is good. Just do the first 4, right? Asset management, application management, vulnerability management, right? Get good at patching. Those tend to be the very
I'm not saying
foundational
something
things.
here easier
Yeah.
said than done. Asset
Well,
management,
of
patch
course.
management, vulnerability management. I know we can say it all day, and we've been saying it for a long time. But again, easier said than done. It's one of those, like, even well-seasoned security practitioner or leader will tell you that it is not easy, Dave.
Yeah, it's not. And I'll tell you, the way that I've had success is by looking at it purely from a standpoint of partnership and being a good support organization, right? And I harp on this all the time with my teams. It's like, listen, security sits in the middle of everything. Doesn't matter where you are in the organization. Eventually, if it touches data, we're going to get involved. So we have to be really excellent support personnel. And in order to move things forward, we can't actually do it. We have to rely upon our IT resources and our developers and anyone else who actually has the direct access to the risk. So what I tell my team is to get really good at partnering and to create capacity. And so what that means is, listen, if you have skills that you can help out some of your other departments, leverage those, work together so that you can actually get embedded in teams. This worked really well on a passion initiative that I did probably 3 or 4 years ago, where we had a lot of latent risk for Linux servers. And I had a couple of guys that were really good. We got them embedded with the infrastructure team. And then lo and behold, they started doing things on behalf of our IT brethren because they were trusted. And so developing those trust relationships can really help move the program along in ways that will, yield a lot of good dividends because you're being really good partners.
Yeah, let me ask you this. I mean, security program, right? You mentioned most of those things, they start at the IT office. So security program, we kind of have that toddler, baby, toddler, infant, like the whole gamut is starting with IT. Have you ever seen, or any of the CISOs that you worked with, that they started with from the business side of the perspective, like business side, where security program is actually run, managed by business, and IT is actually supporting it instead of IT running the security program, and business is kind of informed or accountable at the end of the day. If we don't patch it, if you tell me that your application is going to break, we cannot do it because we have e-commerce website, you stop me doing it, then hey, it's your neck of the line at the end of the day. So have you seen the other side where business is running security program?
Well, I don't think there's a one in either or in this situation. It's one of the things that I've had many conversations over the years with people in my position where like, yeah, we get it. We want to use risk as our driver, but how do we actually get people on board? And the answer is simple. You have to ring a cash register, right? If you're not looking at the program from the standpoint of either I'm making the business more efficient, more productive, more optimized, which is a cost savings, or I'm actually helping to generate more sales because we're using security as a lever for providing assurance that our services are good to use, then you're kind of just at the mercy of an IT budget. And let me tell you, having been in that situation, tin cupping is no fun. So frame everything in the context of business value, and it's very hard to object to a strategy when you can actually show the benefit.
You brought up a point, and it's always been a pinnacle of all of the security program: cash register, money, funding. I need money of what I want to do. Every security leader I have not met yet that would say that I have enough money, I don't need anything. And money doesn't mean tools, technologies. Money means skill set. Money means talent on your staff. So how do you suggest for CISOs, people who are struggling, or what are your tips and tricks to our audience that talk to executives the language, know your audience? We said it, they know it, they've been in this game for a long time, they know their audience, but yet struggling to get money out of executives, yet struggling to get funding to fund the program. And again, I don't mean this by buying new tools. That's just one aspect of it. Operationalizing, maintaining skill and talent. We know that there's a shortage of skill. We've been talking about it, right?
Yeah.
By the end of the day, how do I get the funding to bridge the gap of that skills, and finally keep the well-oiled machine, this keep it running?
This is why I think taking a very business-minded approach is a very good thing when you're thinking about how to allocate resources, right? The last situation you want to be in is to go, show up at the board level and basically say, I need X millions more because we don't have people, we don't have tools, and blah, blah, blah. Because then you're basically saying you're going to solve problems by getting stuff, right? Instead, you should be looking at it from the standpoint of, if I'm running my own program as a business, I'm going to have my own budget and I'm going to be accountable. So then take it right back to your own personal life. Do you have infinite resources in what you do on a day-to-day? Do you basically open up your checkbook and go, I'm going to go buy something I can't afford? Oh, wait, I can't. No, I have to do something different. Well, why should the security program be any different? And the talent one is really hard because we always pay a premium. The really highly skilled people are difficult to get, even harder to keep. And a lot of times what we end up doing is process reengineering, not necessarily deploying tools, technologies, or other things. Process reengineering can get boring. Why? Because you're looking at inefficiencies and you're basically telling people, don't do that. That's dumb. You're wasting time. But that wasted time can translate into real dollars, which then can show up on a line item in a budget somewhere of like, well, I stopped using a tool that made us less efficient, which gave me some additional capital. Where do I want to spend it? Oh, maybe I'm going to go get an intern. Maybe I'm going to get someone who's maybe junior level, invest in them because they're going to be hungry and they're going to want to increase their skills. And then guess what? Retention becomes less of an issue over time because we've actually created a pipeline.
Yeah, and I do want to continue on that piece where the talent gap, right? We see it, memes, posts, and every conference, security conference these days have this like one session about talent, skill gap, and yet the positions that we see it. So we do see education institutes are actually bringing up cybersecurity education. There's so much trainings going on, almost like I can tell you like all these free online training platforms, they're providing it.
Right.
And yet security professionals or security leaders still cannot fill that. Do you think it's because we don't know what we're asking for, or
No, I think we do know what we're asking for. We're just asking for the wrong things, right? Take a look at most of the positions that are available. They're very highly skilled. You know, I'll admit, even in some of the teams that I've run, it's like we're looking for unicorns. Why? We don't have a lot of money and we need to do 2 or 3 different things in a single person role because that's all we can afford. And I think that that's been a big challenge for this entire industry and for security professionals. We need to break that mindset and get us out of the business of trying to really just raise the bar of getting more unicorns because it makes everything more expensive. And instead focus on what is the functional need and where can we afford to invest in less skilled people, because you'll get more of the less skilled people. Yes, it takes more time to develop them. But again, it's like, you know, football or basketball or baseball, these teams, at some point you have to play a long game where it's like we're making an investment that's going to pay dividends 2 or 3 years down the road, knowing that our program is probably going to take 2 or 3 years to mature. So maybe that's the right alignment, as opposed to, oh my God, we suck so bad. We just got to get all of these rock stars and then everything's going to be great in a quarter. That's not realistic.
Yeah, and I can tell you from personal experience that at least the company I have worked for, or the people I talk to in industry, those rock stars, they're not the rock bed for your team. They're not the ones who are actually the glue. So to your point, I mean, security leaders do have to admit, and it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of wise decisions. I guess it's not something that you could do it overnight. Okay, I understand now, because you have to do convincing. It's not as simple as, yes, I have admitted that I'm going to need 2 years to actually build the security program because I'm going to take my time to build a culture, and culture
Right.
cannot be changed overnight. So I'm going to bring diversity into the group. It's not about the diversity as in skin color or the religion or the culture. It's diversity about the uniqueness. Like, are you going to bring junior resource, then are you going to bring a non-IT resource into the mix? So you get the different mindset into the mix here, because cybersecurity, again, we were just recording a session yesterday about social engineering. It has nothing to do with IT. It's a
Right.
people skill. If I can get past that person and have them give me their username and password, it literally has nothing to do with IT.
Yeah.
So diversity, uniqueness, and it takes a lot for a security leader to realize it. And then it takes even harder to convince your board that you, as a useless CISO, have to wait for 2 years to give me the results, and that too, there's no actual confirmation.
Yeah. Well, and I agree that the diversity thing is really, I think, challenging for the more technical fields like development, engineering, security, right? We see a predominance of a certain type of demographic, And it's not because there's inherent bias in terms of those particular demographics representing. It's just that is reality. So trying to introduce a level of diversity, just like you said, it has nothing to do with kind of the skin color. It's more of diversity of thought and culture and bringing perspective, especially for things like security, where it's a very complex domain. We've got what, 10 or 11 different domains overall that we have to track to for different types of security as it relates to data and people and systems. Yeah, how are you going to get that with a single person? Not possible. So, the challenges that we have, I see all the time when we're talking about the hiring process. How do we bootstrap individuals that don't fit into the typical demographics for the hiring process, knowing that that's where most of the talent pool is? And that's why I say, I use myself as an example, and it was a big aha moment for me not too long ago, where it was like, if I looked at what we were looking for predominantly in terms of skill sets, it's like CS degree, you got to have this much experience, you got to have done this, done that, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I wouldn't qualify because I got my degree in English Lit. But you know what? I applied my skills in critical thinking and looking at problem solving to kind of gain the skills that I needed as I did my job and as I grew in my career path. And now here I am. I'm running security programs. And I think it's that kind of willingness to take a chance on people that are really smart, that have good problem solving skills, maybe don't know the technical skills, but they can communicate well. Oh, let me tell you, that is a hotbed of opportunity that I think we are just missing out on right now.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, I think history speaks for itself. We don't even have to convince anyone, because mathematicians, data scientists had nothing to do with cybersecurity, nothing to do with IT. And look at that. AI, machine learning companies, or the research, where do they go? They go look for mathematicians, they look for data scientists. And today, we're at least betting on it, or the vendors or the companies are betting on it, that ML and AI is going to be the one taking over the future. So it is not about the person who really knew Windows or Linux, or it's not the person who really knew the firewalls. It's the person who actually have nothing to do with IT, but those concepts are being applied in cybersecurity, which will be obviously trickled down to IT. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, I said this my entire career. It's always been about the data, right? Data management, data lifecycle. Now we're seeing that with the proliferation of mobile devices, internet. Now we've got bots that are talking to bots that are creating more opportunities for us to interact and engage. It's just creating an endless stream of data. So the people that are going to be really important moving forward are those that know how to find patterns, that can do the analytics, that can, hopefully create some kind of detective algorithms for when things are becoming slightly malicious or overtly malicious. You're right. That's not really an IT person. That's someone who understands data.
Yeah, and I was talking to one of the friends here, and he's a security leader for a large airlines company, and they were looking at hiring someone for their SBOM, for the software bill of materials. And he said, I actually picked someone from a trucking company who handles the scheduling. I'm like, that's not IT, that's not cybersecurity. What are you doing? You're making a mistake. He said, that's where I think most of the people are thinking I'm making a mistake, but it's not. People who can manage trucking schedules, they can really understand how the things are going to connect and what needs to be built into, what needs to be documented, like the detail that they need to go through. IT doesn't. We're lazy because we actually rely on computers for half of our day, I think. And we think that, okay, most of these things are going to be done by computers. People who actually go through different mindset and different eye and their eyes to detail is what we need. And then to your point, uniqueness, diversity. It's not about the culture or the skin color. It's about having the uniqueness. That's where I think that's where it actually exploded, because cybersecurity was something like a subset of IT, and we were getting by fine until I would say late 90s or early 200s. We were doing okay.
Yeah.
It just exploded because everywhere cybersecurity, and it became a hotness. Now we don't have enough people to fill that. And that's where I think we need to go back to the whiteboard. We need to go back to the basics and the fundamentals. Where do we actually train people in their schools, in the colleges, kids.
Yeah.
We need to go back to that, I think, and government, private sector, everybody's doing it, but I think we could do better.
I would not disagree with you on that one. And the problem is just going to get worse. We'll have more devices, we'll have more computers, more systems, and then we'll have less of a connection to the people element. And some of that I think is going to get critical mass here for us, because at some point, either you're just going to be a custodian for a machine, making sure it keeps running because it's got the automation, or you're going to have to be someone who understands what the machine is doing and create the value there, because at some point it does come down to people again. So I agree. It's a big problem for us in the industry. And eventually, if we don't start looking at how to kind of break the cycle, we're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes that we've had in the past.
I think that's the key. I think taking a step back, even for large enterprises, they're looking at their P&L and they're looking at the revenue cycle and they're looking at what product and service they need to push it to generate the revenue. I think it'd be really wise now for most of those large enterprises and companies and vendors to step back. It doesn't matter IT or non-IT. I'm really not speaking to the IT vendors. I'm speaking to the large enterprises that actually runs the economy. Take a step back, think about it, where we're going, and where do we need to go and train our folks, the next generation. We call it next antivirus, next generation firewall. I think this is where the next generation of people are actually going to take over our what we have been trying to fill the void from past 20 years. We don't have skill set. We have skill gap. Yes, we got it. That's a problem statement. What are we doing to actually solve it? And there's always bits and pieces of it, but that comes with threads. That comes with some sort of, what do I get out of this? Okay, let me go help this school, or let me go help this college. Let me go set up this scholarship fund. It comes with some sort of tether. And I think that's where the mindset has to change, that it's not about today. We need to cut that tether, give them what they need today, and make sure that they're enabled for future. Now, Dave, let's wrap up with this one. You've been in the industry for past, two decades, at least that's what I know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If one advice, and again, I know it's going to be really hard for you to give that one advice to either people who are getting into security leadership role, and that's where I think my target audience is today. It's not people who are practitioner, and again, we have different segments for them. But for security leaders, if you have to give them one subset of advice, what would that be?
Well, so leadership is an interesting thing because it takes you out of doing something very specific as an individual contributor and puts you more into the realm of relationship management. So I would say the one key bit of advice I would give to anyone that's looking to branch out into security leadership is, of course, be excellent in understanding frameworks and all of the risk management and all of that, but spend an equal amount of time really crafting your message and communicating and building networks and using the community as much as possible so that you don't have to do all the heavy lifting yourself. Out of the course of my career, the one thing that I learned a little bit on the hard way after having my own company is that if you don't continue to foster those relationships and keep your network really good, it's a lot harder for you when you really need to branch out and go to the next level. So, that's the one takeaway. It's just like leverage your community and put yourself out there.
Well, that dovetails to all of our communities that we are trying to help out. So that's great. And I agree 100%. I think being within the community, it keeps you really close to what's going on in industry, and also how can we work together? I think that's the most important part. Knowing intelligence is one thing. Applying it to your organization and making an impact of change in a positive way is another. I think people tend to stay on the first half of that statement where they know the problem. Nobody's doing anything about it. So
right.
I hope people change that. And again, we'll continue preaching this one. We were never going to stop this. I know we've been doing it for a while, and we're going to continue with this one, and hoping someone will hear it one day.
Let's hope.
Dave, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Sure thing. All right. Thank you.